Let me just tell you real quick about Wilmer. He's a thinker. He's a good writer, man. He's one of those guys that you want to be close to. He's worked with Latinos Unidos there at ACU. He's done some good work with soccer, which is always close to my heart. I like football. but besides that, he's a good preacher and teacher. He works with the different ministries that he does. He went through Oklahoma Christian. He went to Global Christian. He went through ACU. So I think it's a blessing to hear you. I don't want to take more of your time, but he's a great guy that can share with us this afternoon. So thank you for being with us, Wilmer.
All right. No, thank you. Thank you, Omar, for inviting me. And thank you. It's been a treasure to hear everybody, to hear what everybody has to say. I'm so thankful for this opportunity. I think it's a great idea. Thank you for all the people who are involved in leading it, Stephen, Omar, everybody else. Thank you so much. It's a great opportunity. And I want to start off with something that I want to read here, a mini paragraph. And peace is not arrived at merely being passive or by choosing to not offend. Peace is brought about first when we decide that we will serve God and are firm in following Him. From there, we must engage in bringing the message of peace that occurs through discipleship. We must learn from the Master of Peace himself, Jesus, so we can continue in the peace as he did, wherever and with whomever he was with. I want to ask a question here. Would you say a Muslim, some Catholics, and some Church of Christ folks getting together to do Bible study would be an example of peace? Well, that's exactly what happened this past year. I had the opportunity, the privilege to get to know these people, some from my church, and I won't go through all the details, but God worked in that he brought these people together. And it was something really interesting, something I never thought would have occurred. But we always talk about these differences in religion and belief, and it's true, there are differences. But it was pretty neat to see that for an hour and a half on Monday nights, 7:30 to 9, we were able to sit around. In that moment, it was through Zoom because it was during Corona. We're still in Corona, but that's what happened. And really, the Lord opened their hearts. Really, it was something that God did. And it just got me to thinking, well, if that can happen, if people can discuss together from different beliefs, what more can God do? I mean, God is working. I mean, he's not around just waiting. God is active. God is working. So I want us to really think about that and know that God is at work. And he's at work in wanting to bring peace to the church, wanting to bring peace to all of humanity. In fact, he's been at work since the first day of creation. And so we have a great God that we serve and love. Now my topic is the peaceful church. And I want to say this: the peaceful church becomes peaceful really when each person does its part. A church is really the people in it. Sometimes we think of church as the building, and that's the place where we meet to do church. But when each person takes it seriously, then I think we can achieve the peaceful church. So I think we need to focus more on the people, on individually, so that as collectively we can be the peaceful church. And I think when we think of peacemaking, we think usually, or at least I do, or if I think of just the word peace, I think of there being no challenges, no issues. I think of a pasture field, just wind, breeze going by, a lake, something like that, very calm and serene. But when we look at, when we bring that into context with what does it mean to be a peaceful church, sometimes I think we think that it means, hey, I can't say something to offend that person. Hey, I can't say something that's gonna rub that person the wrong way. Perhaps that leads us to be a peaceful church. To be a church that is silent and instead of being bold and going out and trying to reach out. And going back to the story of the Bible study group, while the Catholic guys and the Church of Christ guys still meet, that is still going on. They're actually still meeting, the Church of Christ and the Catholic folks. But I think that to have peace again requires boldness, and it requires prayer, desire, and love for others. And it also requires patience and willingness to disciple. In summary, what I want to talk to you today are three things. Number one, the church must seek peace by praying consistently and persistently for it. Number two, the church must be intentional to bring peace with others and Christ. And number three, the church must seek enduring peace, not momentary peace, but enduring peace. And how do we do that? By making disciples. Seeking peace, let me start off here. First point means that your dependence is on God. It means that you don't, Wilmer doesn't have all the answers. So-and-so doesn't know everything. Is not the strongest. Is not the smartest. We know that where we get our power and strength is from God. So it has to start there. Seeking peace, wherever it may be, it comes from an understanding of a reliance on God, not on a reliance on oneself. We've seen that over and over in Scripture, how God uses the weak, the less, to show and to lead others into His will. And I want to talk also about prayer into this. Why does prayer represent being a peacemaker? In fact, there's a passage here that Jesus talks about us praying for our enemies in Matthew 5:44. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And we've been seeing a lot of things happening, right? Haven't we, these past few days, these past few weeks and months, what's going on in our country? And I think the first thing that God would want us to be doing is to be praying about those situations, is to be praying about those people being oppressed. Perhaps a lot of us, like me, have just kind of been seeing what's happening in the news, and it hasn't happened to me directly. But we can pray about and for those people and about and for those situations. Jesus wants us to first renew our heart, and He asks us to pray for those who do wrong to us. It's not something easy, but it's something that we must trust Jesus and follow Him into doing, especially when we're trying to be at peace with other people. Now, not only does praying for our enemies bring peace with the Father, but it brings peace in us. Because, as I think about the other person and I want the well-being of the other person, and I'm praying that God would forgive them, that God would bring peace to them, that they would be reconciled to God. Well, what's happening inside of me is that I'm changing. I'm becoming a new person. I'm not thinking of that person with hate and rage I had before, but I am being renewed in my heart and mind and having a different attitude. And so that's why prayer is so key. If we're praying actively for those people who may make fun of us, put us down, got it cut in front of us on the highway, whatever it may be, right? Yeah, the little things and the big things, if we're praying that God would bless those people according to His will, what do you think is going to happen in us as we say those prayers? It's going to change us. It's going to change us inevitably. And so when we do these things, we'll be acting, therefore, in peace with them. Our outward behavior is going to change. What happens on the inside will reflect on the outside. We are going to be thinking how to respect them, how to help them, how we can serve them, and on and on. So it has to start, though, from the inside for the outside to change. And I love the example of Daniel. Daniel chapter 6. verse 6 through 11. And the important thing here with prayer, as we continue talking about this, is to keep praying, is to keep it going. Daniel 6 through 11 says, so these administrators and satraps went as a group to the king and said, may King Darius live forever. The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that one who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except to you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, your majesty, issue the decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered, in accordance with the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed. So King Darius put the decree in writing. Verse 10, now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying and asking God for help. One thing we have to know about Daniel is that he was a man of prayer. Not even the threat of death could stop his habits of prayer. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine being in Daniel's shoes? I'm asking a tough question here, right? That would be something tough for me as well. But what would be your reaction? What would be my reaction? Think about that. For Daniel, the circumstances didn't change his priorities. The circumstances didn't change what he decided to do. He decided that he wasn't going to change anything of what he was already doing. We have a lot of circumstances going on right now in our country, right now in our neighborhoods, right now what we see in the news. But that doesn't have to change how we react to it. We can follow Daniel's example in maintaining our life of prayer, maintaining that consistency. Notice also that it says he's asking God for help. That's something that we need to do. Somebody earlier said that we need to be more humble. We need to be humble to be able to have peace. And I think it takes humility to ask others for help. I think it takes humility to ask God for help. Sometimes we may feel the world tells us we need to have it all together. We need to be perfect. We need to be strong. We need to look the part. But Daniel here is asking God for help in the time of crisis at that moment. And I think that that's something that we need to emulate, something that we need to imitate. So let me ask you, what stops you from praying? What things distract you? Is it, let me ask something life-threatening? I'm betting it's probably not that. But whatever it may be, is there anything so important to keep us from the habit of praying? 1 Thessalonians 5:17 says, pray continually. There's so many ways we can go about praying, but the important thing is no matter the circumstance, to be persistent in it and to maintain that as a priority in our lives. Now, Paul exhorts us to be praying for all the Lord's people as we continue in the topic of prayer. Ephesians 6:18 through 20 says, and pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people. Pray also for me, that whenever I speak, words may be given me, so that I will fearlessly make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains. Pray that I may declare it fearlessly as I should. Doesn't peacemaking start with prayer? Paul calls the Ephesians to be praying for each other, for all the saints, for our leaders, for our enemies. And as we do this, we'll be helping to bring peace through the help God gives us. We'll be thinking more of each other. We'll be linked more to each other in thought and prayer. Because as I'm thinking about my brother and sister in Christ, as I'm praying for them, I'm more united to them. So we need to continue that prayer for them. We need to continue that prayer for those that are over us in society, in government, our president, the people over us in our states. We need to be praying constantly for God's wisdom and will to be done. And Paul says here we are to pray in the Spirit, and we're to present all kinds of prayers and requests. So when we link up with the Spirit, when we get connected with the Spirit can lead us to the peace that we're needing in our lives and the peace that is needed in our societies, in our neighborhoods, in our communities. It's only when we link up with the Spirit that we can achieve those greater things. God can do immeasurably more than what we can fathom. That's why Paul has no problem in asking the Ephesian church to pray with all kinds of prayers and requests. Why? Because God can handle it. God can handle it. Jesus is an example of prayer, of course. He maintained a life of prayer. Mark 1:35 says, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. On first glance, we may read this and go, oh, okay, he prayed. Jesus prayed. Sounds good. On to the next verse. But I think there's more to see here. First thing, it says very early in the morning while it was still dark. Here we see that Jesus' intention is to have this action as being the first thing in his day. Nothing else could happen without it. Jesus put this first in his day, and surely it was not by mistake. He had thought and planned this the day before. It wasn't a random act. In other words, it was intentional. Also, it says then that he went to a solitary place. The solitary place, of course, allowed him to be alone with God, to focus on God, to better listen and be in tune and connected to God. Obviously, he and we need that time, that attention to do what we're being called to do by God. And then he prayed. He didn't go and work out. He didn't go and sing, but his focus was on communicating with God. And so he didn't focus on anything else. Prayer is important, and seeking it out in the way Jesus did, I think it's wise for us to do as well. In addition, another example we see is Jesus' desire and focus on prayer is in Matthew 14:22-24. It says, immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Jesus had just gotten done feeding the crowd of 5,000. And what does he do here? He dismisses the disciples immediately, and he goes up on the mountainside to pray. In other words, he chose the aloneness over the crowds, over the disciples' companionship. Jesus had it as a priority in his life to pray. Not the attention of the crowds or even of his disciples was going to keep him, distract him from doing that. Do you, let me ask you, have a special place that you like to pray at? Here locally, I live in Anna, Texas. It's just north of McKinney, if you're familiar with the Dallas area. Minutes north of McKinney. And McKinney's kind of in the northern part of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And there's a park here that I like in McKinney where there's a pond there. And it's just a great way for me to go and connect. I want to, invite y'all to consider a special place where you can go, if you don't have one already, where you can go and find that special connection with God. For some, it's a lake. For some, it's a park. For some, it's walking. But whatever it may be, I think it's good to consider that. And while you're there, being prayerful for peace for this nation, for peace in all the levels, local, our church, and our family, and in those you lead, and in those who lead over you. We look at the example of Jesus. He sought out the solitary places. We looked at two examples where he sought out those solitary places to connect with God. And he sought it out on a consistent and on a persistent basis. Again, it would have been more easy, probably, more hey, I feel good. There's a lot of people around me that think well of me. I'm going to go spend time with them, with these 5,000. That's not what Jesus did. He knew what was more important in that moment, which was to connect with God. So if this spurs you on to find a special place to pray, I'm glad that it did. A special place to connect with God. Think about that. Don't wait. We live in a great country where we have resources where we can go and spend time with God, parks and different areas. So I invite you to think about that. In summary, on this point, let's pray for our enemies, as Jesus tells us. Let's pray consistently and with persistence as we see the example of Daniel. Let's pray in the Spirit with all types of prayers for ourselves, our leaders, and our nation's leaders. And let's follow the example of Jesus Christ by seeking out prayer, even when circumstances and attention from people make it easy not to. By praying, remember, we're linking ourselves with the ultimate peacemaker, Jesus Christ. My second point is that we be intentional to bring peace with others and Christ. Being intentional means we're trying to reach one other person for Christ. It means we're wanting to spread the grace and love that God has given us, that we've felt and experienced in us for another. It means, again, I may not have it all together. I may not be perfect. Who of us are? But that doesn't stop me from spreading the love of Jesus to others. Let me give you an example from the Bible. It didn't stop with the Samaritan woman, did it? She had 5 husbands, right? And the one she was now with was not her husband. John 4:17 through 18 says, Jesus said to her, "You are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is you have had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true." Didn't stop her to share the good news that she had met the Messiah with the whole town. It says later on in 28 through 30, then leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people, "Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah?" They came out of the town and made their way toward him. Seeking out people for Christ is bringing peace to a broken world. And if broken people can share that with others, well, how about, of course, all of us are broken, all of us are imperfect, but we can still share that peace and love of Christ with other people. I think it's just amazing how the Samaritan woman shared with the whole town. I mean, I don't know if I'd be capable of sharing with the whole town with where I'm living at. And sure, maybe the towns were smaller, right, compared to some places where we live. But that's an amazing thing that happened. I mean, it just showed the great evangelist and share of the word that she was to share with the whole town. She wanted definitely to share the peace that she had experienced in meeting Christ with others. So for me, being intentional just means we try. It means we give it a go. It means we may make a plan, we may get some information, but we don't leave it there. We go and try. We have that desire to talk and connect with another person, whomever it may be, wherever they may be from, to try to connect. I love the 1 Corinthians 9:19 through 23, where Paul talks about this trying to be intentional to reach others. Let me read that. 1 Corinthians 9:19 through 23. Though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jews, I became like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law, I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law, I became like one not having the law, though I am not free from God's law, but am under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law. To the weak, I became weak to win the weak. I have become all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do all this for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings. Paul, the great apostle, demonstrates how much he's trying to reach other people. That is an example right there. To have, he wants other people to have the peace in Christ with being united with Christ? Do we have that same great lengths to try to connect with people? What are things that we can start doing, start changing in ourselves, in our habits, to better connect with those around us, in our neighborhoods, in the neighborhood around the church, in the street where we live, everywhere, anywhere. I read this and think, we know the animal, right? The lizard can change colors and adapt to its environment. I think that's what Paul is showing us here. Can we adapt well? Can we connect well when we're in an uncomfortable scenario, in an uncomfortable situation? How well can we adapt and forget about ourselves and connect with the other person? That's the hard part. That's the part that we need to be praying, God, work in us, work in me to adapt better, to connect with other people. Not that other people can connect with me, but how can I connect with them? Paul showed it. Paul showed it by his example. And he calls us to do the same. And in this theme of peace, that's something that we need, really. We need to be able to connect and adapt to other people and other circumstances. Again, not easy. Again, there'll be mistakes made. Again, there'll be blunders, but the whole point is trying. The whole point is trying. So I want to say this too, that what I'm asking us to do is not just something that I hope one day we do, but I hope it's something that we really take to heart and that we do it continually as a habit in our lives. Just like, think about it, we have some habits built in. We have the habit of maybe the way we get ready in the morning, the way we go to work, we have the habit of going to church on Sundays. We have the habit of probably eating 3 meals a day. But what about if I asked you to have the habit of connecting with a new person each week? Perhaps maybe not necessarily a new person each week, but just trying to connect with somebody each week to get to know Christ more, to disciple them. Why not implement that as a habit in our lives? Why not go to somebody that is different or the same as us, but needs Christ, and connect with them? Who can you be intentional with this week to reach for Christ? Who comes to mind? Who comes to your heart? Is it the neighbor? Is it the coworker? Is it somebody that you've been feeling for a while that you need to talk with, to connect with? My whole encouragement is for you to pray and to try and to let God lead you into that. So my third point, as I move on here, is we need to, after praying and after trying to connect with other people, we need to focus really on developing them, on making disciples, if we are to be called peace in this world and a peaceful church. So if we want to promote peace with people, we've got to be intentional about it. And I think the ultimate way to bring peace is not in a certain gimmick, is not in a certain, just event, but it's really in a process. It's really in developing people for Christ. You see, Matthew 28, 18 through 20, I think gives us the answer. It says, "Then Jesus came to them and said, 'All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely,'" what does Jesus say? "I am with you always to the very end of the age." So think about this. Jesus has spent, some people say 2, some people say 3 years. He spent that time with the disciples. And the last thing he leaves them with is this: go and make other disciples. Go and make other followers. If He left this commandment with them. And that was the last thing he left them. How important should we take that commandment as well? How important should we take that seriously? Are we incorporating that as a habit in our lives? Who do we disciple in our lives? Who are we bringing to maturity in Christ? Who do we disciple? Who are we helping grow step by step? Now, I know that how to make disciples, I'm sure there's tons of books. I'm sure there's different ideas, different ways of thinking about that. But I think we can all agree that it means being a committed follower of Jesus Christ. Through thick, through thin, you want to follow Christ. What does this have to do with peace, you may ask, right? What does discipleship and peace have to do with each other? Well, 2 Corinthians 5:18-20 tells us this. All this is from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation, that God was reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting people's sins against them. And he has committed to us the message of reconciliation. What does Paul say here then we are? We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. We implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. Paul is saying here, we're ambassadors. We're representatives of the peace that Christ has given us to the world. It's us. We don't have to look left or right. It's us. We are the ones. And God is working in us to be that representative to those around us. 2 Timothy 1:7, we're not alone in this. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, for the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline. You see, we don't do this alone. We're not off on our own to try to make peace with different people, different political thoughts, different ideas. We are, with the power of the Spirit, we are given boldness, we are given courage, we are given power, and we're given self-control, and we're also given love. That's so important to love, because it's one thing to be bold, but without the right way of being it, without the love behind it, it can be taken in a wrong way. We need to remind ourselves that we're representative peacemaker God. There's nobody higher as a peacemaker than Jesus Christ. We are that representative. And as we seek to grow more and more in him, we'll be better representatives of that peace to the world. As we teach people, as we facilitate God's word, we're helping reconcile people to Christ. We're helping bring peace. There's tons of materials out there, a lot of ways to go about discipling others. And in what I do, that's what my focus is to equip other people to disciple others. So, there shouldn't be a lack of resources out there to help you, but we just need that desire and love for God to make disciples. And I want to say this as well, making disciples is a process rather than an event. It takes time getting to know people, talking with them, their struggles, and going through their mistakes. And, they did that again. And, no, that happened again. But as long as they have the love of Christ in them and they want to learn, we're there for them. Colossians 1:28 claim, admonishing and teaching everyone with all wisdom, so that we may present everyone fully mature in Christ. Fully mature in Christ, not half mature, not, he knows a little bit. Oh, no, he's kind of in, kind of not. No, Paul's intention was that they be fully developed in Christ. That's what Paul went for, and that's what we should be going for in people as well. We should be trying to help people to grow maturely in him. By focus, there's going to be challenges along the way, and there's going to be things that don't seem peaceful. Because as we call people to be more like Christ, we're asking them to make changes in their life. We're asking them to adopt new habits. But if they're the person of peace, if they're the person open to wanting to know more about God, while there may be conflict, those things eventually they'll adopt, and there'll be more peace between them and God. Now, second, Corinthians 5:16 talks about should see other people in this world. It says, so from now on, we regard no one from a worldly point of view. Though we once regarded Christ in this way, we do so no longer, Paul says. We don't see people without the spiritual eyes that God sees them. We see them as people loved by God, created by God, no matter where they're from, no matter their culture, no matter their speech, how they look. They're made in God's image. They're created. Genesis 1:26 tells us that. They're special. We are all special and unique. So when we look at people like that, and when we look at them like they need to be rescued from sin, our approach, our mindset, and even our urgency to connect with people changes. No longer is that just the across the street. No longer is that just the person across the neighborhood. That's somebody that God created, that Jesus died for, and that if not in Christ, he or she needs to be rescued from sin, from the consequences of sin. So, I just want to really emphasize one more time, don't miss the value on discipleship to bring peace with other people. It may not be the most attractive thing. I'll be honest. It may not be the thing that gets the most applause, right? It may not be the thing that, people, ask you about every week. But you know what? This is something that I've taken to heart. It's something that God sees, and it's something that I think helps bring peace to people, because you're walking with them to help them to really have a relationship with God, and not just a superficial once a week, maybe twice a week, but a deep relationship with their Creator, with God. So I want to just really encourage you to think about and continue, if you're already in that and doing discipleship. Peace is not looking for conflict. When you decide to bring somebody along, I mentioned this earlier, because as you're asking them to change things, there's going to be conflict. But in the end, by challenging, by encouraging them to be more like Christ, you're helping them to bring more peace with their Creator, with Jesus Christ. So I really just want to ask us, who are we discipling? Who are we bringing along? Is anything stopping us from fulfilling this great commandment, that Jesus laid for us? The church is losing people because, they don't know the word, don't pray, and even more so, don't know how to defend their faith, how to share it with other people. How can they bring peace? So we need to really look at how we develop people into a more closer relationship with Jesus Christ. And I believe discipleship is the answer to that in Christ. Let's motivate people to be disciples and not just attendees. Let's encourage people to think in the long-term process rather than just the short. I'd rather have one fully committed disciple than 40 who half follow or just come, on Sunday. That for me would be better. What if the measuring stick of our churches wasn't how many there were on Sunday, but was how many are discipling and being disciples, right? Those are things hard to measure, hard to evaluate, but I think they are things that we need to keep in mind and are of the most important things. People by walking and showing them the way of God. And in doing so, we'll be helping the world and the church to be a more peaceful one. So I'll end with the summary of my 3 points is that I want to remind you that the church must seek peace by praying consistently and persistently. Just like we saw Daniel, just like we saw Jesus, even when there's threats, even when there's persecution, even when people do wrong to you, we need to be finding that solitary place, that solitary time, that way to connect with God and keep doing it. Number 2 is the church must be intentional to bring peace with others and with Christ. You know, as I work here, I feel like I learn something every day, and I feel like I'm the ultimate student because I don't have it all together. I don't know sometimes, but I feel like if I'm trying, that's the most important thing, praying and trying. So that would be what I would leave with you, you know, just try. You know, there's a lot going on right now with our politics right now, and perhaps trying is inviting somebody to coffee to hear their viewpoint, is inviting you know, your spouse and another couple out on a double date, on a dinner. It's getting to know people from different places and just trying to connect. And as we do that, if they are not in Christ, inviting them into that. There's ways you can invite people, and if you'd like to know more, connect with me, and if anything of what I know can help, I love to help. But the last thing is that point number 3 is that the church must seek enduring peace by making disciples. And as we focus on that, it's a process. It's helping people step by step. So what are you waiting for? There's a world out there needing peace. We know that. That's why we have this conference. And God is looking for willing servants. Will you pray? Will you be intentional to reach one and disciple, or will we let the opportunity pass? My prayer is that we'll take the opportunity. Thank you so much. I appreciate this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Wilmer. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry I had to leave my house, but I heard what you said, man. Those 3 points are good points. I think the more we're intentionally discipling, that's the core to me, and your humility to be able to recognize that, you know. I think we lost the command and the charge to go make disciples, so thank you. I don't know if anybody else has a question or comment they want to make.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As ministers, as you were saying that peace is not going to be an event. It's going to be a process. So then, as ministers, what do you think is going to be our expectations? Or how should be our expectations thinking about helping or doing something to bring this peace?
Yeah. Well, I think it just starts with a conversation, with inviting people, with prayer, and just letting it go from there. Just being willing to listen, to understand the other person, be empathetic, and just have the expectation that y'all can be at peace and united in Christ, and you know, inviting them into a relationship with Christ. Really, I think it's a two-way street. I think we do our part. We invite people to, we look for that peace, but we also want, you know, the other person also has to respond. The other person also has to want it as well. You know, Jesus was pretty clear in Luke, I believe it was chapter 10, where he says, if you go into a town and they don't want to hear you, they reject you, or really they're rejecting God, you dust off your sandals and you keep going. But we always have to maintain a Jesus-like, a Christ-like attitude and mindset, and just see where it goes from there. We hope that people will want to know more about Jesus and But I think we can always be that representative of peace, no matter if they're open or not open to Christ. And just hopefully they're open to Christ, and we can continue further relationship in there. So we expect the best, but we put it in God's hands.
I have
Yeah, I
an
think that. Go ahead.
I have an expensive question.
Uh-oh.
So peace brings conflict when we're making changes. What is the drawing line? What is I mean the word tells us to support one another. The word tells us to endure. You're telling us to endure. But where's the line that we draw when you've done so much peacemaking that you just feel like you're not at peace? What can we do
Yeah.
to feel more peaceful at letting it be, like they say, let it be, and let it go to peace, you know?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. And that's something that I struggle with, Bill, because I'm the type of person that wants to keep persisting and pushing when perhaps the other person doesn't want to. So I'm still learning that myself. But when I think about it, it's not such a bad thing when you over try, because it shows that you cared. It shows that you did your part. There comes a point when you find out and you understand, yeah, maybe this person is not accepting of my love, of my care, of my affection, of the message I'm trying to, and I have to keep looking for those that do want that message of love. Again, Paul tells us to be good with everybody, even with those who do us wrong. But I think when we're talking about reaching people for Christ, we do have to put a limit. We have to pray about that. We have to ask for wisdom in that. And God can provide that wisdom and discernment when to know. Sometimes it takes one or two times. Other times it could be a little bit more of trying with that person. But for me, if I feel like I've tried like 3, 4, 5 times and reaching up to this person and they're not responding, or something comes up. But if I see some desire, if I see some openness, then that for me is reason to keep going, is to reason to keep trying. But I think it's wise and healthy for you to put lines, because if not, one, you'll be possibly burning yourself out because you're over helping one person or people, and two, you're not putting that time in to help other people who maybe do want to listen. At least, I see that in Luke chapter 10, where Jesus says, hey, go, but if they don't want to listen, move on to the next one. Again, I'm not saying that we don't be peaceful with everybody, but I'm just saying we draw the line where people who are wanting to know about Christ and those who do not. That's more what I'm talking about. But we can always be helpful and be servants when we're called to. It's kind of a long answer, but
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
yeah.
I'm glad to see that I'm not the only one that struggles with it, though. It's just it's a hard thing to go through.
I think it's, as a minister, there was this Enneagram. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that Enneagram test. It kind of evaluates what type of person you are. And there's by a number, and there's a number 2, which I am, which is a helper, which means that you're always looking to help other people. You're always ahead of yourself. So you think of yourself last, and sometimes the tendency is to take care of yourself last, which means that you end up not taking care of yourself. And so then you feel tired, you feel burnt out, you feel kind of angry. So putting some markers in your life, like time to rest, a day off, prayer, renewal of finding a place to pray, things like that can help you to go in the long run. But it's good. I mean, I think it's good to kind of know ourselves and know our habits. I think as ministers, we all tend to be like that. It's not a bad thing, but we just know our limitations. Even Jesus took time to rest with the disciples. So we don't need to underestimate that, because we are only human. We have to find some kind of balance. Unless obviously God calls us to something very supernatural, but we have to try to find that balance in Him. Again, it's just something that as ministers we struggle with, but finding that time, balancing your life, finding times to rest are good ways to help with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good test. I'm number 8, by the way. I'm a challenger. Does anybody else have
Okay, I don't
anything
know what
else?
8 was, but
A challenger, yeah.
okay.
Anything else, questions or comments? We have a few more minutes left. I know it's been a great day, but maybe longer day than we thought. Thank you, Wilmer. I think your comments are great. Intentional prayer, taking time for ourselves, that does bring peace. Because if we don't have internal peace, we can really help outside of ourselves. So thank you for that. Discipleship is I think we need to preach that more. We need to talk about that more often. Discipleship, definitely. But I don't know if you have anything else to say, Steve, or anything that you want to add.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to just kind of draw your attention, everybody, to the chat one more time. I just put in the 3 links to social media that have to do with the group of folks we're trying to form and keep in touch with on a constant basis. There's a Facebook link, there's the Instagram and the Twitter. And the idea is that this not be just, one series of 5 classes and we don't see each other again or until next year. The idea is that we want to try to create kind of a network of resources to help each other out, people to consult with when we run into problems, because each of us have our different gifts and specialties and experiences. And so we want to try to kind of have a community going forward. And then every year, the goal is to come back together and kind of see, how we did with what we talked about this year. For example, if you come back next year, Wilmer might be there and say, okay, did you guys, find somebody to disciple? Did you find a place to pray, or were you more consistent in that? Did we try to create peace with, other people in our community? Just a little follow-up, and then continue to build every year from there. So these are the three links to social media. As we said, all of the videos will be on the Summit website. And then we'll also have them probably, if we can, up on the Facebook page as well, for people to see that couldn't be here today. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this day.
Thank you, Wilmer.
Yeah. Thank you for all the good that was said today, and for the challenging thoughts that we had. Thank you for the experience of everyone that came, for their good example in living out what they told us about today. Father, we pray that you would lead us to do the things you want in your church and in our communities, Father. Give us the resources to do it. Give us the wisdom. Give us the right kind of mindset. And Father, help us to work together as one body, as one team, Father. Thank you for each speaker today. Thank you for David and Leah. Father, we're grateful for this opportunity. In Jesus' name, amen.